So let's create the first assembly. So I'm going to click here under item and new. You could also just right click anywhere on the screen and click new. I mean, either one works. And then I'm going to pick inventory assembly. Now inventory assembly is the type of item that we use in order to take raw materials, raw components, and assemble them into, in some cases, a finished good, and in some cases, a work in process. A work in process would be like an assembly within an assembly, and that stuff is also kind of common. So in here, under item name, we're going to call it box with bulbs, and then I'll just put next to the name WIP. You don't have to do that, but I'll do it just so I can identify them pretty easily. And then down here where it says I purchase assembly item from a vendor. So only if I actually buy assembled boxes with bulbs from a vendor, I would pick that option. So since I don't do it, I'm going to leave that out. Here where it says description, I will put here also do not sell. So do not sell, right? Because again, we don't sell this assembled product. This is still going to be a component of another item. Now, I still need a revenue account, although I'm never going to use it, so I need to put that there. And then down here, where it says raw materials, this is where I'm going to create a new current asset account for work in process. I'm going to go to add new here, and then I'll put here work in process. You can call it WIP if you want to, just WIP, that's fine. Just pick whatever name, just make sure that you have raw materials and work in process as two different items. Now, notice that in here, I don't have a minimum reorder point, I have a minimum build point. So basically what a minimum build point is telling me, it's how many assembled build boxes with light bulbs do we want to have in order for us to do our regular manufacturing process. So let's say that I generally want to have at least 500 built ready to assemble a box with bulbs, and then the maximum I want to build to the ones, ideally I want to have at least 1,000 completely built box with bulbs. Good to go. So that's, again, we'll discuss the value of these later on as we actually do the building and see those components. So now let's talk about the actual bill of materials. So this little tiny box you see here, that's the bill of materials. And a bill of materials is just a fancy word for components inside of an assembled item. So I can actually just look for my items that are going to be assembled here. So let's say, for example, that's going to have one box. So a fully assembled box with bulbs will have one box. So I'm going to put here quantity 1, right? And then that's also going to have, let's say, 8 light bulbs themselves. So we're going to go down here and look for our light bulbs. So we got our specialty bulbs here. And let's say this box contains, let's say it contains 8 halogen watt bulbs, whatever those items are. So I'll pick these, and then I'm going to put here 8. Okay, so basically this finished item here is going to be a box and 8 light bulbs. But again, we don't sell these. These are also going to be part of the larger box, which is going to contain a chandelier and this box with a light bulb. So this will give you the example of the working process or an assembly within an assembly of that component. Now, up here, this is really important. Here it says cost. And it says, well, what cost do you want to give it? Okay, so actually I can choose user-defined cost and then make up my own cost if I wanted to. Okay, now that could serve a purpose if you want to override the actual component cost from the bill of materials. However, for the most part, if you actually trust the cost of each component, you're going to see a total here that says total bill of materials right there. And you actually want that number to transfer over. So in order to do that, I'm going to go into cost and click on total BOM cost. And then basically that 655 transfers over to here. And then I don't have to actually calculate the cost. QuickBooks will calculate the cost of my component based on my entire bill of materials. And then we're going to add labor later on and discuss, what does it mean to add labor and overhead and that sort of thing. Now the sales price itself, I can override it. If I'm working with QuickBooks Premier, and if I want to work of a certain markup, then what I would do is I would just really transcribe 655, and then I put times. Let's say, for example, I wanted to add a 50% markup. I would do 0.5 and press tab, and that's going to give me a 50% markup. Now, this little information here that says markup 50% and margin 33%, that is not available in QuickBooks Premier or Accountant. That's only available in Enterprise. And how that's functional is I would click here on Edit Markup. Again, this is only QuickBooks Enterprise, and I would actually say, look, the markup I want to have is 75%, and then I hit Tab, and QuickBooks will calculate my sales price based on that. Or let's say, for example, I don't want to do it based on markup. Let's say I want to do it based on margin. Let's say I want at least 35% margin on these products. So I'll type there 35% and then hit Tab, and QuickBooks will then again calculate my sales price. So this is, again, only available in QuickBooks Enterprise, but this is very useful because down here where it says when assembly cost changes, it's asking you, hey, do you want my sales price to go up based on those margin requirements? That way, if the total BOM cost, right, this 655 here changes because maybe some of my assembly items or my bill of materials changes, do I want that sales price to be automatically changed? That's how functional this is. Very useful because in a manufacturing environment, the component costs vary greatly. Now, it's possible that you may be in a marketplace where the sales of the product is not really something you can change. You're very tied to maybe a market price, and then this stuff wouldn't be useful. But if you want to help the QuickBooks user protect their margins based on a particular margin level, that's what that will be useful for. Now, in this particular case, if you remember, let me go back for a second. This box with bulbs is something I'm never going to sell. So in this particular case, I'm going to override this to 0 because I'm never going to sell this. Remember, this is do not sell. So when we'll do our next level of assembly, we'll pay much more attention to that piece. Okay, so for the time being, this would be 0, and I'm not going to update based on any margin or markup because, again, I am not selling these products. Now, I like this a lot, that you can actually, if you want to edit any of these things, like for example, let's say the box is actually $1.80, I can actually click here where it says Edit Item. It opens this up, and then I can change this to 1.8, like just like that, and then hit OK, and then my cost component will go up. So in many situations, we have to make sure that we're changing the cost of our raw materials consistently in order for them to really reflect maybe our average cost or a FIFO cost or a LIFO cost, whatever it is. So now the curious thing is QuickBooks takes the value that's actually up here, not the value that's up here when calculating your total bill of material cost. So that's kind of the curious part about it, that when it's actually calculating bill of material cost, it's not using average cost, it's not using LIFO, it's not using FIFO, it's using whatever the dollar amount we put up here. So I'm changing this to 1.9, hit OK, and then you can see right there that in my bill of material cost, that's being updated. That's why it's very useful to have that edit item button right there. I really wish the edit item button existed in sales transactions, but that's a whole nother story. Now, if I have bigger components that fit, that doesn't fit in this 3-lane, 4-lane kind of configuration, 3-line configuration, I can click here where it says Full View right there, and I would have a much bigger screen for me to add more components to it. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit OK. We'll hit OK, and then we'll hit No there. Okay, so now we have, I'm just going to expand this here. Now we have one inventory assembly, which is box with bulbs work in process. Now, real quick, an area of confusion that happens quite a bit is people will create an assembly item, and then they go to the balance sheet and say, hey, wait a second, where's my transfer of value from raw materials into work in process? Well, we have not built the assembly yet, right? We just created the assembly item, telling QuickBooks what are you going to take from when we go ahead and actually create the assembly. So it's a really important process. So let's go ahead and build the assembly. And by the way, I know I have not bought the boxes or received the boxes yet. So I kind of want to show you what happens when you sort of have an incomplete process there. So I'm going to go to the inventory menu and go to build assemblies. Okay, and then I'll pick my only assembly item that's here, which is a work in process. And then down here, really, really small, in sort of gray letters, it says maximum number of of um, items I can build based on my quantity on hand, right? It's right here, okay? Now it's really, really small, it's hard to read, but that tells you right there that I don't have enough components or enough inventory on at least one of the items that is causing that issue, okay? And here, the issue is, it's right here. If you look at, let me just give me a second, get my cursor back. If you look at box quantity on hand is 0, that's causing the issue. And if you look at my bulbs, quantity on hand is 304. So I could assemble based on the items that I have on my of my bulbs, but not in my boxes. So in that case, let me go ahead and receive some of those boxes. So I'm going to go to enter bills, and then I'm going to go ahead and order some of these boxes. Okay, I'm going to go to, I think it's Box Depot, right? And then I'll pick my box item. And then let's say I'm going to order, let's say 2,000 of them. Okay, so this would be just a regular way I would order boxes, PO, receive a bill. But one thing I like to do right before hitting save and close is, we talked earlier, let me hit Control L here and Control E to edit this. So we talked earlier about this reorder points. Okay, how are these reorder points useful? Because when I was actually doing a PO or receiving a bill, notice that there was no information there about how much I should be ordering. So before I typically order components, what I do is I go into Reports, Inventory, and then I do Inventory Stock Status by Item. Okay, and then we're gonna look at here. We see here a box, right? We see it right there, box, and then there's my reorder point. So there's the information. And notice that over here where it says order, there's a little checkbox that says order. That's basically telling you that you need to order because you have less than your minimum reorder point. But what's really neat about this is, and this is a QuickBooks Enterprise only feature. So far you can see this in QuickBooks Premier or Accountant just fine. However, this little box here that says auto create POs, that's a QuickBooks Enterprise only feature. And let me just click on that again. So right there where it says auto create POs, again, QuickBooks Enterprise only feature. And when I click on that, basically QuickBooks tells me, okay, I looked at every one of your components, I looked at every one of your stock, I looked at everything that you should possibly order to get you back into those minimum levels. Okay, so I can actually choose which components I want to order. If I actually click select all here, QuickBooks will create a purchase order for all of those items and get me back into my maximum reorder points. But let me just clear all for a second, because I'm kind of only focused on the boxes for now. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that box right there. Okay, so I'm going to click on that checkbox, and I'm going to see that QuickBooks is asking me to get me back to 5,000. So right here where it says create POs, and this little checkbox that says show purchase order after saving, will actually create a PO and then show me a report of all the purchase orders that are going to be created, if it's more than one, or it'll just give me the one purchase order that was created, so I can review it and email it or fax it to the vendor, or however it is that I actually do my orders. So I'm going to go ahead and click on create PO down here, and I'll click on that. So QuickBooks will create the PO for me. It didn't send it to the vendor or anything. You still have to email it or fax it or call the vendor and confirm the order, all that stuff. I'm going to go ahead and double click on that, and then QuickBooks automatically created the purchase order for me. So remember, when we were receiving some of the boxes, I went straight to bill. I really didn't know how much I was supposed to order. That's the really useful part of using the auto create POs, which is only available in QuickBooks Enterprise, to be able to guide you through the process of creating those POs. So at that point, then maybe I can now create my bill. So I'm going to go to enter bill. I'll go to my vendor that I ordered the boxes from. Then the PO is already created. Hopefully you emailed it or send it to your vendor. I'll hit yes. I'll pick my PO that was automatically created. I'll hit OK, and then my 5,000 boxes came in. Now I need to be able to have that inventory in stock for me to be able to assemble. Otherwise, I'm going to get that error message that I showed you earlier that said you have 0 available to build. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save and close. And now I'm going to go ahead and do my build. Now, real quick, while we're in the inventory stock status by item report, if I scroll all the way down here and you see my assembly items, notice that based on my pre-planning, I want to have at least 500 of these built. Now, I may not have enough stock to do so, but we'll talk about this shortly because I may be short on bulbs or something like that, but we'll discuss that in a minute. So what I essentially will love to build, or what I want to build, it's at least 500 of them, right? I mean, or at least 500 or a maximum of 1,000. So that's what that order check mark means. In this case, in the context of assembly, it's not really asking you to order. In this case, it's asking you to build. And now there's no out to build button. That would be nice. So that would be something that, that kind of marries to the auto PO feature. There's no auto build function to get you back into the builds. That has to be a manual process. But I mean, it is where I think Intuit may be going in terms of new features in the future. We'll see, hopefully. Okay, anyway, so again, let me just do this again. I'm going to go to the inventory menu and click on build assemblies. Sometimes it's under the vendor menu, depending on which edition of QuickBooks you have. I'm going to go to build assemblies. Then here where it says assembly item, I'll pick my one assembly item. Again, that's my work in process assembly item. Okay, now I get to see that I have 5,000 boxes in stock and 304 light bulbs in stock. Down here, QuickBooks will do the calculation for me and say, well, based on all your components, the maximum number of assembled boxes you can build is 38. So that's my limit. I can only do 38 at this point. If I actually wanted to build 500 as intended, okay, and I hit tab, QuickBooks will give me this warning saying, hey, by the way, you really can't move forward. Now, you can make it pending, and then once you have the items, you mark it on pending and that sort of thing. But the problem that you have, especially with QuickBooks Premier and Accountant, is you don't have this little option here called Show Shortage. This is new. They added this, I believe, in, let me escape that again. I'm going to click it again, put the 500 here, and then hit tab. Okay, so there's the 500. Okay, so I'll put the 500, hit tab, and then where it says shortage, I'll click on show shortage, and then I get a report. Now, what is this report telling me? This report is saying, we have 304 on hand for this. You actually are going to need 4,000 to be able to build the 500 you want to build. Therefore, you would have to reorder an additional 3,696 in order to get you back into whatever you want to build. So at that point, I can say, okay, fine. Let's just go ahead and mark this as pending. Okay, so we can mark this as pending. So I'm going to go ahead and go to build and close and mark this as pending. So I'm not going to assemble my 500 units yet because I just don't have enough light bulbs, right? And then I'll go back into my inventory stock status report. You can see it's kind of interesting. Inventory stock status report. And then we're going to go down here, and then we get to see right here where it says full assemblies. You see that little checkbox. If I click on full assemblies, it will recalculate my availability based on doing the full assemblies. But let me get out of here for a second. There's a different report I want to show you because I started off on the wrong foot. If you go to assembly shortage by item, this is actually a much better report to use. Assembly shortage by item. This report will show me everything that I'm short by. Let me see. It's kind of curious. Give me 1 second. Let me go to my shortage report. Okay, oh, sorry, I went the wrong route. So I'm going to click on shortage reports. I apologize for that. I'm going to go to shortage report, and then on this report, it tells me that I'm short at 3,996, and there it was. I was looking for this little button here. I forgot where it was. So up here, it says auto create POs. So what you can do from the shortage report, again, only available in Enterprise, is you can create the purchase order just to get you up to that minimum stock level that I need in order for me to assemble the 500 boxes I wanted to assemble in the first place. So at that point, I can hit create POs. And again, the PO gets created automatically. And if I were to then receive the inventory, and I'll put here, I forgot what the vendor's name was. This was Peacock. So I'll put here Peacock. I'll hit yes, and I'll pick that PO I just created in order for me to get the items that I need. Again, I would have ordered this amount and I would have received this amount. Now that I received that raw component, I can close this, I can close this. And now if you go back and see this, now I have no issues building my 500. You actually see there that I have no issues building my 500. So that's one of the really interesting ways I can work with QuickBooks Enterprise and the auto create PO feature to get me all the work that I need in order for me um, to order the products that I need to create an assembly. So then at that point, I can click on receive, remove pending status right there on the bottom right. Okay, so I can click on, let me see, I can click on remove pending status on the bottom right, and at that point, my purchase order will just become. Let me just see. Let me select that. Give me 1 second. My cursor goes away sometimes. So there's my remove pending status. You should be able to see that. When I click that, you see that now it goes away. It's no longer showing as a pending build. And then when I click save and close, that build will actually happen. So what's going to happen is absolutely all my light bulbs will now go away, right? Because I will use them all. And then all of my boxes, not all my boxes, but 500 of my boxes will now be used. So I'm going to hit save and close. Then I go back into my item list. I'll maximize this. I look at my boxes. I got 4,500 boxes left. Let me scroll down and look at my light bulbs. And then I have 0 halogen lights left. So that gives you an idea more or less of how that worked. And then when I go into my balance sheet, I should now see a shift of inventory balance from my raw materials now into my work in process. So that was a dollar amount that was shifted from raw materials to work in process. Okay. All right. So that's the first step. And that's because boxes with bulbs is not a final product. It's an assembled product that goes inside of another assembled product. Okay. Now let me create a new inventory a new inventory assembly part. So I'm going to go to new, and then I'll create a new inventory assembly, and we'll call this one chandelier. If I knew how to spell chandelier. And I'll just put FG at the end just to let me know it's a finished good. You don't have to do that. That's just my internal piece here. And then here under the bill of materials, I'm just going to click on full view. I find this to be much more comfortable to work with. And then I'm going to pick the multiple items that go inside of my finished chandelier product. So let's say, for example, that it comes with some wire. So I'll pick wire here. And it comes with, let's say, 12 feet of wire. And this particular item is set up as an inventory part with multiple units of measure. In this case, it's set up as foot. So I'm going to put here 12 feet of wire, and then I'll put one of my inventory components, which is the actual chandelier itself. So we'll pick this one here, the tapestry with faux, whatever that is. So we'll pick that item there, and they say that only comes with one, so one major chandelier. And then part of the package, it's also going to be not the box, the raw box, but the assembled box. So let me go down to my box with balls, and then I'll click on that, and that comes with one. Okay, so right now my total cost of my assembly is $56.65 based on the cost from the assembled work in process item, the inventory component cost of the chandelier itself, and then the inventory component cost of the electrical wire. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Same thing here. So down here where it says bill of material cost, $56.65, that's going to be transferred over to this side. Okay, that says $56.65, unless I actually, so this is at $56.65. So that's unless I actually change this to user defined cost and pick my own cost. But again, I like using this because I want my cost to come from my bill of materials. That way I'm sort of monitoring my bill of materials for that purpose. Now down here under asset account, this is neither raw materials nor work in process. So this is going to be its own account called finished goods. We'll create our finished good product here. Okay, let's say our build point, let's say we usually want to have about 50 of these minimum, and then 100 in stock. These are my actual products that I sell. So this is the stuff that I actually sell. So here I can put finished chandelier with all components. Whoops. Okay, and then the income account, I'll pick my income account, and then going back into that feature that's only on QuickBooks Enterprise, that little button there that says Edit Markup, I'll click on that, and then I'll say, look, my costs are $56.65 because that's what was defined by my BOM cost, and I want to have at least, let's say, 80% margin on that, so I hit Tab. So this tells me what my total sales price is going to be. Now down here where it says always update my sales price, or always or never update my sales price. This is if I want my sales price to change every time I change my component cost. So this stuff is going to come in handy once my component costs start changing, which we'll talk about when we talk about adding the labor component to it. Okay, so let me hit OK to that, and then I'll hit OK as well. I'll hit close, and then I'm going to go ahead and build that again, because if I go to my balance sheet, I will see my raw materials, my work in process, but I don't see my finished goods because again, we haven't completed that assembly. So let me go into inventory, build assembly. Now I have two choices. I got my work in process item, and then I have my chandelier item, right? So I got my chandelier item, and then based on my quantity in stock here, I can see down here where it says maximum number you can build. It's 41.66. Again, I can't really build 0.66 chandeliers, so the maximum I can do technically it's 41. So let me, so I'll put 41 here. That is going to tell me exactly how much quantity is going to be needed for each one. Now, by the way, what you see on this screen here, where I can actually change, add the component, or change the quantities on the fly, this is only available in QuickBooks Enterprise. QuickBooks Pro, or sorry, QuickBooks Premier or Accountant will have these screens locked. So whatever is originally set up in the item and the components, I can't change them on the fly. So this is a really nice component here that I can change them on the fly. For example, I want to say, look, from this point forward, I'm going to include maybe 2 boxes with bulbs. I can actually just come in here and put 2, and notice that it was just me switching it, and then my assemble product is going to be assembled with different components. So I'm not stuck to my original bill of materials. With QuickBooks Enterprise, I could change some of these components on the fly, even if I wanted to. With QuickBooks Premier or Accountant, you would have to go back to the assembly, change these boxes to 2, and then come back and rebuild again. So once I click on Build and Close, now we can see that we have finished goods, we have work in process, and then we have raw materials. Okay, so that's pretty much the concept